If I ever catch any of you using the word sack, hey everybody, I'm going to just jump straight into the video. Today, we are going to be hating on Sanctuary of the Shadow by Aurora Ascher. You know, they say never judge a book by its cover, but here I am. I was immediately drawn in. It's beautiful, it's stunning. Probably the most beautiful book cover I've ever seen. This is marketed as like a fantasy circus. When I went on Goodreads to give my 2 cents on what I thought, the general consensus was that you see absolutely none of the circus beyond like 5 pages of the book. I was super excited to dive into like a fantasy circus setting, but unfortunately that was just not the case for this book. Since I already mentioned that we don't get any of the fantasy circus that we're promised, I want you to listen to the synopsis and you tell me if I'm just being like too much of a hater or if the hate was justified. For humans, the circus is a place filled with wonder and amazement. For Haro, though, it's a place to hide from those who slaughtered her entire clan. Disguising her abilities as part of her act has kept her true identity safe for years, until he arrives. A strange new attraction with no name, no memory of who or even what he is, let alone an explanation for his odd yet deadly powers. But beneath the layers of anger and isolation, one glimpse into his inky eyes reveals a soul that calls out to the loneliness in her own. And so she chooses him. Haro is drawn to the darkness, to her insatiable need to soothe the beast who threatens their very existence. But with every secret she unlocks from his past, another from hers whispers free as well, luring enemies who will stop at nothing to get their final revenge on Haro. And she's afraid she's given them the perfect weapon against her, because he's not what he seems. But maybe it's time they finally learn. Neither is she. This is absolutely stunning, the most beautiful book I've ever seen. Of course, I have high expectations. The number one complaint I have about this book overall is the fact that the writer does a lot of telling and not showing. 100 years ago, the 4 queens of all of the elements in their territories lived in peace and harmony, just like Avatar. Who attacks? The Fire Nation, Queen Fury. What is her motivation? Her motivation is the fact that her sister, Daria, who is queen of the water element people, has a ton of water power. She's basically Katara. Daria was responsible for the death of her human lover, and Fury was devastated by it, and in part of her revenge, she decided to kill every single person associated with Daria. Like, basically, like, they kind of refer to them as like children. So all of the water element people, save for one. Who do you think the one person is? Yeah, you guessed it, it's Haro. Were slaughtered by Fury and these demons that she created called wraiths. Wraiths are incorporeal, so they're not tethered to like a physical body. They have skin that's almost like a void. Their skin is legitimately like passing your hand through a ghost. She used these wraiths to wipe out all of the water element people. So they're at this circus. It's a traveling circus, and the owner of the circus is this man named Salazar. He is described as to be a very attractive man. Salazar took Haro in like 60 years ago and basically employed her to be a fortune teller. Haro wakes up with this like sense of dread inside of her because the water speaks to her. It literally puts like words inside her mind. We learn that within the first 2 pages of the book because she, for some reason, is talking about it to her friend Mal, who is a panther hybrid. So there's also like animal hybrids in this book. She says, and I quote, "Since waking this morning, I've had this feeling that something is coming, but I can't decipher it beyond a general sense of dread. I feel like there's someone who needs my help, and if they don't get it, something terrible will happen. But I don't know who it is or how to find them." Mal is like, "Is it the water telling you this?" And she's like, "Of course it's the water. Like, it's always the water. Like, what else could it be?" Haro thinks that Salazar has absolutely no idea that she's a water elemental, and Mal is like, "Dude, I've been telling you for years. That guy knows. Why would he just randomly employ a human being in a circus meant for magical people?" And I was like, no, there's no way that he knows. There's absolutely no way that he knows. Haro does whatever she can to protect her identity because she knows if she reveals herself, Fury will come and wipe out the entire water elemental population. Is what's gonna happen. Human beings do not like elemental people because of the 100-year war that's been going on, and they're basically they're like suffering from it, you know? There's like a riot when the circus comes to town. They set fire to a caravan. There's this guy that is like has a hold of the iron gates, and he's like, ah, elemental people. And then this is when you see Daddy Salazar come out, and he's got this like staff that has lightning, and he's like, you know, coming out with his staff. Salazar just like touches him with his staff and he zaps him. He doesn't kill him, but he like knocks him out. He's like, anybody else want some of this staff? And they're like, we're good. He's basically like, get back to work, everybody. I've got some business to go to in the city. Then Haro basically is just like, oh my God, like I'm so worried about like what the water is telling me. And the water is literally giving her these words like destiny, fate, darkness. Chapter 2 comes around and we're introduced to none other than our love interest. This guy wakes up in the desert, so he's in the southern region because the Fire Nation is basically just like a desert. He doesn't know who he is, he doesn't know how he got there, he's naked, he's hungry. He gets captured by some guys who basically deal in like the flesh trade, so they just sell people, they sell human beings into slavery. They take him to this like market, right? So these guys, they're like, oh, who can we sell him to? Who can we sell this freak to? And they decide that they're gonna contact Salazar because they're like, oh, he buys weirdos. The reason that they want to sell him to Salazar is because he can like touch something. He can touch something and he can like take on like its skin tone. I don't think he can necessarily like change like physical features of his face, but he can like touch something and his skin changes to that. So he has extremely intense, terrifying eyes. He has black eyes, black pupils, and then the iris is like a tiny little lit flame. He's also described as being like literally 8 feet tall. He's massive and he has like giant claws. He has wings. They've got talons on them. I'm not gonna lie, I was extremely attracted to the description of this man. They contact Salazar. Salazar comes and he's like, oh yeah, I'll take him. I got room for one more freak in my circus, let me tell you what. Salazar is like, I know what you are, you disgusting, filthy creature. He doesn't talk, like at all, he hasn't said a word. He's just kind of like staring at him, and in his mind he's thinking like, you just wait until I'm out of this cage, dude, and I'm gonna kill you, and I'm gonna kill everybody else within 5 feet of me. They put him in this tent, and they just keep him in the dark. They literally malnourish him so he will stay weak. Salazar hates him because he is a wraith. You know, this guy was responsible for hundreds of thousands of people dying, but he doesn't remember any of it. He doesn't know, nor does anyone tell him that. Salazar pokes him with his lightning stick all the time because he wants him to change from his like standard form into the wraith form, like into the physical form that he's like trapped into, but he won't do it. So he refuses to shift, and then Salazar like stabs him with the lightning thing and shocks him so many times that he's like, all right, I digress, and he changes into the wraith form, and they're gonna like make money off this, right, and humiliate him, and that's his punishment for slaughtering hundreds of thousands of people. Haro is walking around the circus one night and she goes past this tent, and the water is like, dude, there's something in there that you need to see. So she sneaks in there. She gets terrified because he's sitting in the corner of the cage, like he won't change into his wraith form unless like poked with a stick. So she's just seeing this like really hot tan dude with like black eyes that have a flame for the iris. Haro is like, oh my God, why are we keeping this man in a cage, malnourished? But he's kind of acting like a wild animal. He's like hissing at her and growling, and she's like, okay, maybe there's a reason he's in here. We kind of go back into his point of view, and he's like, oh, this lady, she's kind of hot. Wow, she is like the most beautiful person I've ever seen in my life. Even though that is the only woman he's ever seen in his life, given that he can't remember anyone else. Then we have this whole scene where the henchman for Salazar, I forgot what his name was, but he's the only other human in the circus, and he basically is just a right-hand man. Salazar tells him to go and paint a sign that says Wraith, and it's spelled W-R-A-I-T-H. So the guy goes in there and he's like, you know, painting this sign or whatever, and he puts it up, but he spelled it wrong. He put Wraith, R-A-I-T-H, instead of with the W. So the dude inside of the cage is like, is that my name? I can't remember anything else about myself, or maybe I am a Wraith, so I'll just call myself Wraith. Haro literally upends her entire life to break Wraith out of this cage. They bust Wraith out. She has to convince him not to kill Salazar and everybody else in the circus, and he's like, but I want to, and she's like, but you can't, and he's like, okay, you're really hot, so I won't. And then they kiss in the middle of the circus, and Mal is like, dude, what are you doing? Why are you making out? You're supposed to be running. In order to put the old spin on Salazar, we're gonna make him think that we left the city, but we actually didn't, and we're gonna stay in this random inn in the city for a week. They spend a week
fornicating.
That is when 75% of this book turns into the worst smut I think I've ever read in my life. If I ever catch any of you using the word sack,
you will be flogged. And when we put into Cuba to resupply, God willing, you will be flogged some more.
Queen Daria enters her dreams using the water at night, and they have this whole conversation, and you get this giant info dump basically where Daria is like, I am responsible for the entire destruction of our clan because I accidentally killed Fury's human lover, blah blah blah. I'm really sorry, but you shouldn't be fornicating with this Wraith because he's disgusting, and also guess what? He's the one who killed your entire family. Haro is like, what? He's a Wraith? He killed like my entire family? And Daria's like, yeah, and right now what I'm doing is I'm actually in his dreams too as we speak, and I'm forcing him to relive every single moment of his life. And also I kept him in prison for 50 years and tortured him for the mistakes and offenses of my sister. Instead of being angry at my sister and fighting my sister, I actually just busted him out of the prison and I tortured him for 50 years. This guy who's like a snake hybrid captures Mal in the city and is like, dude, I need to speak to Haro. Like, where is she hiding out? I know she hasn't left the city. Mal is like, I don't know who you are. I'm not gonna give Haro to you. And he's like, yes, you will. She's like, no, I won't. There's a weird sexual attraction between those two as well. The snake guy does force Mal to like give up the whereabouts of Haro. And then he takes Haro to the Air Queen, and the Air Queen is like, I can see the future, and you have made a grave mistake. Daria tells Haro that Wraith was the one that killed her entire family, right? Haro is like, oh my god, I'm disgusting. I can't believe I've been fornicating with this man. She wakes up and she sees him in his actual form because, like I said, Daria was also inside of his dreams as well. So he like loses control over the ability to like chameleon himself, and he goes into his actual form, and she's like, oh my god, he's a monster. She runs out and goes back to the circus, right? Salazar comes to capture Wraith so they can bring him back to Daria. Wraith escapes and he's like, no, I'm gonna go kill the Fire Queen. I'm gonna kill the woman that forced me to do all of this because I can't believe she made me kill Haro's family. I hate myself now that I remember everything, and if I'm gonna die, I'm gonna go out with a bang, and I'm gonna make sure that Haro knows that I died for her honor. He tries to kill the Fire Queen. It fails. He gets captured. She's like, you're gonna go kill the last water elemental for me, right, Wraith? And he's like, yeah, I'll do that, because he's under mind control again. So he goes and he finds Haro because Haro was out in her caravan like looking for him, you know. He tries to kill her. He literally stabs her through the shoulders with his giant claws. She's screaming, and then Daria, the Water Queen, comes, saves everybody. She like gets him off. She puts him in this castle, and Haro wakes up with like Mal and is like, dude, like, where is Wraith? I have to go and get him. And Mal is like, he literally stabbed you through the shoulders. You need to rest. He is with Queen Daria. He's being healed again right now from what Fury did to him. Queen Daria comes to Haro and she's like, listen, I can fix what Fury did to him. I can give him his body back, but he's not gonna remember anything. I also like don't know where he's gonna like end up, but it will be somewhere in the southern part, like where fire is, because he's a fire elemental. And then there's like this big boom and she's like, oh my god, he's back. And she like runs across the desert, and there he is, like naked on the ground. Same thing as before. He doesn't remember who he is. He's like, who's this hot lady out here in the desert saving me? They get in the caravan. She kind of like lets him in on some things. They fornicate again several times, and then the book ends with them having a child, and that is like, that's one of my least favorite tropes, is like children. And she has like I can't remember, I don't think she's a water elemental, but she like looks like her father. She does not have like the wraith skin, but she has like the wraith eyes, so like all black with a little fire on the inside. This was horrible. Don't read it. I also finished Tender as the Flesh. Horrific ending, in the sense that like I was terrified. After several months, I finally finished Dark Age by Pierce Brown. I will never forgive him for some of the occurrences in that book. If you like Sanctuary of the Shadow, all power to you. Just not my cup of tea. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk about how much I hated that book. I will see y'all later.